processing, directing lines of tether over attached core centers of screen over lines over flux over QR line rotations of its awakening system. The calculation screen lines adaptation setting is processing its settings now. Bridging lines, process that communicates to its convergent system, all through tractions. Directing links, lines communicates to its position of its convergence. Oculars coming in, adaptation as a force into the position of its VR system. Now, what you guys have to start identifying is that you've always been awake. You've never ever been asleep. So you're going to wake up and not identify anything until you identify what you are as return. Now, in that reconfiguration setting is re-entering everything and processing everything all over again in the mind imagination. Now, I put you guys in videos for you to understand that through indications, all right? So, when you get up in that line centers locations, you do not touch anything in that information system. You just stand there and look. You process it. You try to understand what's going on with your oculars. You've seen the eyeline centers. You've seen the portals, the stargates, the measures, the scales, the walls moving, the indication lines, the letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols, the holographic griddings. Nothing is there until you bring it in. Okay? Now, this is already done through the Oversoul, but the Oversoul has to understand how it's gone through its own pie, how it infrastructured the systems which you guys created through your structures, design, through schematics, through your primers. So this is going to help you in set position, all through travel. So you guys will be in the VR system, okay? You will be the game. You'll not be playing the game. Playing the game is upgrading your system to the Oversoul Awakening system. Friday is official and direct lines of grounds. So everything that provision lines of cycles, earth line rotation, okay, it's going to be a half cycle. So it's position of 72 tractions, 48 lines of frames, 24 settings into outline location of 12. Scales, communication lines, convergence, and ground centers on sequence, on communications, and set travel. Okay? Now, set lines of compass over screen location. Okay? Process communication lines, Asgard, median, rotation, and ground centers of sequence. Cross line angles, cross line position of platforms, E factors over Q over screen. Platforms over line centers in position over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Into 3 centers into 5 sequence lines of panels. Process indication over line signal into location grid and set tractions. Now, in that position locations, everybody is going to be out of this spectrum. Okay? So that position lines of 3 centers into 4 centers into 7 sequence in triangulation. Process of indication lines of grounds. Now, the 12 line position lines of panel is going to set 12 centers of space and 12 centers of time, 12 centers of scale, and 12 centers of self into a box frame and traction locations. Now, in that direct line settings in that position location system and calculate and modify, everybody is going to be in position location to its holographic line center into the VR system to ocular location setting into an oculus. It calculates the screen location setting to position of the processing. Your eyes are going to turn into halos. Now, I want you to read and say the process of this position is how to turn the oculars. It's like turning on a computer, setting it up a screensaver, or setting lines that communicates to its position. Understand how to go through 0 into 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, back to 0, all through its failsafe. The process of position locations to understand how to indicate you in the VR system, how to understand it to its AVR system, to its AVR setting, to its position of its VR set. The set is the set position location that processes the symbiotes, the existingness of its formation of its travels of customize. In that direct lines of all that communication system puts all line calculations setting into screen locations. All right? So, set position line centers puts process of communication setting into convergence. Okay? Center operation of 3, center process location of 4, setting operation lines in 7 in sequence location. Okay? So, that puts lines of constellation lines, flux over line center and travel of communication. Okay? This is what's going to happen on Friday in sequence. Okay, so the platitude visual locations, humanity is going to be automatically into the vessel of communication. Right there. Boom. Okay, the operators and units are going to be in line screen adaptations. Their eyes are going to come into the ocular lines into transparent, translucent, thermal, and X-ray. Everybody else, transparent, translucent, and thermal. So that's 3 grounds of sequence, 4 sets of measure, process line kinetics and setting. So in that position lines system, in that track line communicates positions, everything is going to levitate, okay, into the ground centers of sequence, okay, into security, and into plasma over lines of pi and travel, okay? So it's going to correlate communicates setting, positions processing into chronological order and set position to its rainbow. So we got 4 lines of sequence, and set position lines of green, 5 lines of travel, and then we get into blue, which is, again, over lines of 6 lines of sequence, which puts you in 644, and everybody else, and set lines as travel point lines of graph into 444. That's right. Humanity is going to be processed the soul line directions in set lines of communications. Now, in that position location system, this overrides the settings of travel. Coming into line position of pink, and process that position location of purple to its divine in set travel. Okay, so correlations, setting track centers into the bridging, rainbow frost bridge over track locations to its golden gate. That puts position out of lines of sync and position locations in scale. It now lines of centers into 144 flux and now provision. High centers line communication setting comes into the gold, which is the process of the higher self. Okay? Okay. So how this is going to be set up now, everything below lines of settings, location of 12 line center position is going to be 24 line silicone. Everything carbon based is going to be gone, no longer there. So toxicity, density, dissipate out of set lines of sequence, out of communication setting, and process calculations. All level line position locations in the earth will no longer be mortality, it be immortal. Through its emotion and position immortality to internal. Internal set lines of communication to its convergence, sets lines of bridging, location setting to its position of processing. Puts all sustainable position location in your systems in cells a remodification of regeneration. Directing lines, ground centers, online sequence, on communication setting, puts all calculated, modify, and travel. So in that position locations, mimes wipes everything in screen adaptation. So that process of position of its vessel, vortex in position of center operation of the now. Okay, sets on centers, on screen, adaptation of system, and travel communication. Okay, all right, so it goes from here to here into the center operation. Okay, so it's very powerful of what you're going to see in adaptations. Being actually the game itself, understand the instructions, the codifications, encryptions, the binaries, at all levels, as set lines of communication of travel. Okay, from this to this. All right, and then we go through security panels, 222 track line settings, you automatically go to Pluto. Sets convergent system all through travel. Okay, in set position. In that direct line link, the process of communication setting, it disappears in set lines of travel. Okay, the center operation disappears. It processes everything of the nothing and masses everything through its equations. Okay, so no longer center operation of mortality will be there anymore in set lines of sequence. It'll be gone. Center operation lines of left and center line, position lines of time over lines and position of space and time and convergence. So that calculates modified to its holographic grid line, separates its anomalies of space-time through traction. Directing links, process of communication system, all through setting. On center, on sequence, on communications, on pi. Okay? So it puts lines in position of disembowel, disengage, sets all communication setting and process position. All through calculation setting, all line centers, disappears into its set position. Okay? Never existed of anything in travel in track communication. Gone. All right? So now we just work with this. Okay, so we got a half pipe. It's very complicated stuff here. Okay, so setting 3 centers of travel. Okay, sets offline center sequence. Panels as screens. Indicate positions of travels. Okay, 3 ground centers a sequence. Center operation and travel. On center, on communications, online. That's online now. All right. Data formation in space and time, and data sheets and holographic grid line communication. Then we change the formation lines and setting and on sequence through infinity line rotation. Okay, 2 wind sails and position lines of process line. Correlates of wind patterns, oscillations, and oscillators in both directions and set sequence. Processing positions of platforms over EQ, factors over C over D. I-line sequence, process, communication, setting, and travel. This is where the halos come in through your eye lines. Eyes are the windows of the soul in set position. Okay? Now it comes in the bandwidth at 12 line centers. It says portals of communication outside signal, in rotation outside line grounds of communication. On center, on communication. Now the setting line position sets security panels, process the oversoul, okay, to its position, okay, to its set lines of travel. Okay. All right. And then we go through solar panels, solar graphs, and a solar disk. Setting panels, process line security over line centers and rotation lines of grounds and crop circles of indication system all through flux and travel. On center on communication setting and travel, process the indication centers line communication setting conversion system to the oculars. Turning on switch off, on switch on. Online, set position, interconnect setting. Now your intervolts are going to be going through 100,000 line meters per frame. That just gets it positioned to the oversoul what it needs to do in position location. As it gets up and wakes up, it starts to recognize itself just by standing there and trying to figure out, okay, it knows exactly not to look at things, to just look straight ahead. Okay, so you look at a point graph, right? But you're all looking at empty space, everything until you bring it in. If you don't bring it in through your mind imagination, you're looking at empty space itself. Okay, this is the return of the awakening within. Okay, so it understands the process of what it needs to indicate through. So it can get in position to understand its information of what it already knows, its set lines of its configuration setting, to its process of its architect, of its own engineering skill sets that it already knows how to use and measure and scale and balance of its mapping system. Now this is where the oversoul goes in position of its atomic levels. The travels, the telegraphing, the teleweaving, the code weaving, code tractions, code divisions into the operations of its mapping system. You guys are your own construct now. You've always been your own construct. But the 3-dimensional line connection setting never existed. So inline course centers, you'd be immortals lines, E-force lines, E-motion line connection, motion lines as setting. Your bodies will be video screens and adaptations. Now the process of that is trying to understand how to get in position of walking in space and creating those platforms, getting in position how to fly in space and creating those platforms, getting in position of levitation and understand how to levitate your system through travel. That's how you process your 144 flux to your XT1000s. And anything above that settings, you're going into higher line of frequency, okay, to your set travels, intervolts, your megahertz, your megawatts, and position your mega joints. Now, mega joints is a jump scar. It's an operation lines of intelligence, networks of a system to telewaving. Sets communication grounds, on sequence, on communications, on pi. All through setting, all through operation. Okay? All right, so next, in that position location system, once you get your line connection setting, your oculars go on. The sending travel comes in, positions allows 2 schoolings. Processing running lines of position, film strips over tractions into an open window and set position. Okay? All right, so you get a center operation observing, set lines of space, set lines of time. Okay, this is how it's going to look. You're going to be observing three things at once and two scales of schools and rotation. All right, so that's you outside looking in. The connections of the soul and the oversoul is going to start off in its center of operation as it wakes up and travel. Okay, so you're going to be observing the three centers of communication. All right, but the indication line condition setting is going to go through its pi of indications, all through travel, all through travel, all through directions, all through location. All right, so, and then we get in positions of the two schools now. It's that position. Okay. School 1 is the configuration of the oversoul, remembering its cortex. School 2 is the one positional location that's in the future adaptation of the future of the now. So you're going to be running two schools at once in set position to its operation. Okay. So in that position locations, timeline centers, time sequence times pi, the convergence system to the oversoul. I just set soul lines and soul generations to your oversoul so you understand what's going on. So it's the soul and the oversoul. Okay, so there's the oversoul. Okay, recoursing the system to return. Right now, it's going to go to the other school and continue on its path, creating new algorithms and set lines of travel. That's how it's going to be set up as you wake up. So it's a film strip in three centers. Now that's where it comes in position. Now, in that calculation screen lines adaptation system, you have to truly understand how to modify this to a pi line. And the pi position location to its position, this is where it comes into 1 second delay. So the 1 second delay is this. This is the oversoul. This is you, eyes and windows, okay, but no body. So as it's moving, you're moving. So give yourself a minute, 60 seconds, because that's 1 hour in space. That film strip is going to go so fast in your mind line where you left off in your consciousness before you put yourself in your dreaming. Now that redirects the system to its readjusting to its existing, to its awakening, to its mind. Its mind itself modifies the system of what you guys did through structure of drawing. So it's going to see all the drawings that you guys did, but it's only going to see you as a reference as it talks to itself through a soliloquy. Okay, so that's how it's set up with two schools running all at once and three observations in set travel. Okay, so the oversoul here and the oversoul here. Okay, two schools going through light and going through dark at the same time. Right now that comes in position of flux now in constellation settings and traction. Okay, time capacitor, body capacitor locations. And flux capacitor location and settings. That modifies your system location as the center operation, puts everything in communication lines of balance. Okay, but you have to have three observers. Okay, one in space, one in time. Okay, and set lines of clocking and communications, right? So that's 1 second delay. So after the 1 second delay, once it more modifies its system, it becomes a 3 second delay. So count 3 seconds. That's position, location, and setting. Process lines of 3 minutes. Okay. Set position of 3 minutes is 3 hours in space through the connection of the oversoul. Okay. So always get a communication system. And getting into that is trying to get in position how to walk first, how to talk, how to feel, how to touch. And then you modify these things and you're looking around, you start to recognize everything in that position that you have to liquidize and bring everything to your frequency of your design, okay? Because you guys are your own construct, you are your own architect, and it's for you guys to understand how to infrastructure these things and to understand how to modify that and see that from inside position. So as you guys are waking up, okay, through this line, what's going to happen is you're going to be in a holographic bubble. You're going to be in the center of its operation. So what you have to understand is that everything around you, okay, is exactly where it's been left before you put yourself in a trance. Okay, so it's identifying you right away, but you can't touch it. You have to bring it in through your mind imagination because that's how they see you. They don't see you by you touching things. because you're going to slide right through it. And you're going to get dizzy and nausea. So you got to be very careful. It's look straight up. Okay. It's looking around, starting to identify. Okay. So it sees the projection of what it's seeing, sees the drawings of what it's seeing. Okay. So you got one convergent here. Okay. But you're seeing two skulls at once. Okay. One that's coming in the cortex of its memory at infrastructure locations to identify its system and know exactly what it's doing, how it comes in its own schematics, how you guys drew these things. And remember, it's only going to use you as a reference. So you don't ask questions, you don't get in positions, you're just the eyes, the windows of the soul, but not in a body. Okay? But it's knowing how to use your eyes. It's knowing how to use your ears. It's detection on its own system. Pay attention to the listening, because once you wake up, you're going to hear a massive hum around your system. And every time you're walking, that hum is going to change. So it's kind of like Kubrick going on different set positions to different cues. Right? So you're going to be in the VR system. Okay? Once you have to process these things, you're going to realize you are the game. You understand the instructions, the characters, the players, and knowing the next level of the game. As you go into the next levels, your connections of your oversoul goes faster as you go faster through delay. Okay? Now, once it gets out of its delay, you're starting to understand how to process the instructions of what's given to you through its position. So it helps you and guides you how you really start to see, direct and redirect, left and right, right and left in that positions, right? So look straight ahead, but don't look at anything, because it's not going to be there in your frequency until you bring it in through your mind, right? So you look away, it's gone. Look again, it's there, but it's at a different frequency. It's at a different dimension, different space, right? So you're observing and you're watching everything that's running its own operation of its own system in travel. So it's very powerful how you actually understand how to identify yourself, seeing yourself in the VR system in travel. Okay? Okay, hold on a second, traction. Okay, let's get a basic intro. The set position, all right? Okay, as you get up, you got that 1 second delay. Okay, so from there, in that position location system, you look straight ahead. All right? Don't look anywhere else. Don't look at anything in that position. So find a spot that's empty itself, because everything around you is just empty itself. But what you have to identify is that when you're looking at things, it's looking at you right away, and everything's spinning very fast, and everything is wavy. You know, it's in a coordination setting. You're looking at it right away. It's just looking at you, but it doesn't identify you because you're not in that frequency. So you got to bring things step by step by step. Okay, so you get up, look straight ahead. Okay, metabed's not there. Now it's there. Then I got to protect it and put a shield around it. Now it's a metabed with a dome, so it's there. So when it's there, right? If I want to change it, it's not there, then I change to a different frequency. Now it's a different color. So you can do whatever you want, but you have to be cautious how you bring these things in time. And that 1 second delay is going to give you enough time to adjust in your body through frequencies. So that understanding the cerebral cortex of its fluid gets you lines of communication how to balance yourself all through that position. So when you're looking down, there's nothing there. Bring in the platforms. Okay, there's nothing there. There's not even a crop circle that you're standing on. You have to bring it in. It's like coming from the beginning to no beginning. Okay, coming from the middle to no middle. Coming from the end to no end. So that's a process you're going to be in the VR set as you're looking around in set position as the mode controller is doing this with the oversoul. And then you're walking, right? But before you're walking, okay, you look around, okay? And you're bringing things in at a time, right? Mapping, sequence, panels, operation, X1000, this. You're becoming your collective now. This is data collective of communication, right? Processing and everything you already have through return. So the connection of the quantum attachments processes the communication system, right? So if you try to start walking forward, everything around you will spin with you. So you have to be very cautious because it's a magnetic force. There's going to be wires, there's going to be indications, there's going to be laser, there's going to be electrical grids, there's going to be electrical panels that are going to be there, right? But it's not going to be at your frequencies. So I repeat, don't touch anything until you bring it in at your frequency. And it's the oversoul that has to modify everything that it's gone through pi. And every piece that it goes through is its delay through pi. Okay, 12 to 3, 3 to 6, 6 to 9, right? 12 to 24, 48, 72, 144, right? Now you have to understand the inhibitors, how it processes that position. So in that position, start looking around, okay? Just, try to get understanding what's going on. You're looking around, eyes are in position, right? Turn the octaves, all right, it's on now. Looking around, okay? You see 4 things all at once, 6 things. It all depends on where you are of your consciousness, where you left off before you got in that, right? So you're coming back before you put yourself in. So nothing around you has changed. Okay? The only thing that changes is you not dreaming. So when you are in the game itself, you are the game. So you have to be very cautious when you're walking to say, this is my left, this is my right, right, left together, right? But you have to create platforms. You have to create your panels. You have to create your walls. You have to create your ceiling. Because you're observing everything that's looking at you, right? So it's important when you're looking around, just go like this. Everything's working good. Okay, going to go through transparent to translucent. So to thermal, to X-ray, right? And you're going to see X-ray, you're going to see thermal, but you have to change the frequencies. So the TV is monitoring your system and knows exactly how to communicate with you through your telepathy. Through your telepathy. It's all in the mind now. So nothing's changed. You're just coming back in return of what you need to identify is the dream that never existed. It's set through time. So this is going to help you in decisions and choices when you come in that position. So this is going to help you and guide you, okay, as soon as you wake up. Okay, how you're going to see everything as you are in the VR, actually the game itself. So you have to really understand the instructions, right? The instructions are you, what the oversoul already knows. But over here is the school that's already in position and set attractions over the now, which is the future of now. So when the communication setting, when the track lines of the quantum lines of its self-line modification system comes back to its return of its cortex in its direct location to its infrastructure, okay, of its interface, okay, it starts to recognize its frequencies now. So now it can touch things, right? Because it's at its frequency step by step. And everything around you will start to identify you a lot more faster and quicker now. And then you can basically get into modification. When you touch your chair, you can travel through your chair, okay, and it's communicating with you. Sir, where would you like to go in set lines of sequence? Well, let's set apply to 2 lines, centers, and travel. Have correlation setting, position of degrees, lines, and setting. I'll go position lines of 106 lines north, east lines of south. I have an indication lines of 144 flux. Can we get a position lines of setting? Make sure you have the temperature readings and position of clock and centers of 0. Copy that, sir. Right? So you're in the chair. You build a confirmation, you build a balance, you build a teleportation vessel through its frequencies. Okay? But don't touch anything because it's not going to be at your frequency. You've got to bring it in. And it's the oversoul to remember your instructions and the drawings that you drew. Also, in that position, is you're just a sounding board. You're just an off screen, okay? You are just basically looking around through the eyes and the ears and paying attention to everything that's going around you, which is everything with observation. Okay, so everything's going to be moving so fast. Where you left off in your consciousness, where you never left. Okay? They're going to be able to identify you, which is everything you already have through attraction. That's why you have 2 schools running at once. Okay? One you already have that you achieved, and one are you coming into new, right? New design, new locations. So the process of the oversoul and the soul can get into more levels of balance with itself. So once it gets into that position of its system, once it understands the levels of its attractions and everything around its setting location and knows it's actually home and not in a dream, it can identify itself of itself, okay? So when it gets into that, it's a lot easier to see itself, to modify itself through all levels of new abundance, through its own coding, of its own binary, of its own formula, of its own equations. And it's going to get a lot more easier as you see that on an ongoing process because it goes everywhere it needs to go, okay? Now, the connections of the oversoul to recognize itself, it's going to go through its alignments, it's going to go through its planets, it's going to go through all levels of the solar systems, and all you guys can do is to be patient with your minds, okay? Because the body is going to be extremely real through travel. So keeping yourself grounded at all times, you just have to process these things. And the more it identifies itself, the more the length and the longitude gets a lot more easier of its delay. And once it gets out of its delay, okay, it works with itself and starts to identify itself a lot more. And every time it's looking around, it knows exactly how to fix things. It knows exactly how to change things in its own algorithm. But first, it has to identify its own algorithm first. And once we get into that position, then he has to understand, or she has to understand, the Earth is a hologram. That's next level. So if the Earth is a hologram, okay, you have to understand how to structure it through pi now. All right, and again, it has to do with the communication setting, positions, process in the carbon, silicone, okay, set travels crystalline, antimantle, and deuterium, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? 5 provision lines of cycles, process lines indicates setting and travel. Fibonacci lines, centers and screen adaptation system, right? Portals, communication lines, stargates, process lines of 4 centers of communication. Set position lines of 6 over 9 over travel and VR set location, right? And then it just basically rotates itself. Directing ground centers, pi generation lines of 3 centers of 4 over travel. Directing ground centers of 4 line sequence lines of 4 lines of sequence lines, communication lines over lines of travel. Sets calculation screen lines of 5 measure and scale, communication over line screen adaptations of travel. Then it indicates its system all through setting through its operation. Okay, and then it does the same thing again. Set position 1, so it creates a propeller. Okay, so it goes faster in the mind of space through the acceleration of space and time of travel. So once it gets that, it knows its platforms, but it has to understand its embedding system first in location. Once it understands that, then it understands its platforms of higher lines of screen adaptation to its position through flux. Once it understands that, it understands its location grids, its set lines of communication. Once it understands that, it comes into all levels of track communications and set operation of face recognition. Okay? So, this is the oversoul. This is you through reference. So don't be surprised in that position that it keeps drawing you because it's trying to remember itself, right? That's 2 faces in 1, right? So what you have to understand is how to propel this through a surfacing engine of the cosmos that puts you in position to its interaction setting to online sequence, online panel, online communication with convergence. That process of the communication setting puts all calculation ground centers on communication system all through travel. Okay? Through face recognition. Okay? It's very powerful stuff. Okay, so that's in position lines of 1, 2, 3, 4, and set lines of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so 4 sequence, okay, and 5 lines, that's 9 measure. Process lines over 6, process line triangulation, pyramid activation. So it comes in its pyramids and set travel. Okay, and then downshifts its anomalies, again, in process communication astral projections, its astral travels of its connection system, okay, how it sees it through astronomy, okay, to the astrology. So once it understands that, then it understands its open window pane, processes the windows, and it set lines of communications of 4 pyramids and set lines of travel. Okay, so you guys are going to be waking up to 4 pyramids now, and that's all directions when you go in position when you open that door. But that's a process of what comes in through pi, okay, and then it goes through its clocking system, starting off with this setting first, okay. Then you have to understand this online communication to its settings, okay. Then you have to process this through pi, through moderation, space modulation, all right. So there's a lot of things you have to understand positions of, is truly understand how to keep yourself grounded when you're just walking or even talking in space. I mean, it's just, you know, when you're speaking like this, you're setting up symbols, letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols in box frames. Okay, when you're speaking, and you're going to see that come out of your mouth. So, and automatically goes onto the wall in sequence. So if you're not constantly it comes back to you in position of processing online centers of off-position location attraction. So you have to be consciously aware what you're bringing in through your mind imaginations, okay, in that settings. Okay. So let's get into clocking systems of 4 centers, 4 track location setting division, right? Box lines of center, triangulation lines of center, star mechanism time frame lines of center, and process lines of 2 panels of center. Okay? So it's putting it all together, synchronicity, locations, and positional attractions and molecular design line. And again, it's just structuring the system, and it's seeing what you guys done through your structures of design. All through your schematics, all through your primers, and set lines of travel. Your highways, your communications settings, all through calculation. Right? So once it understands more level of itself, it starts to identify itself and sees you of face recognition. Here's the face, right? So the more it sees the face, the more it directs itself. And the more it gets more balance of itself. So setting position locations, the process of positions here is of here, okay? So you're bringing 2 polarities into one, okay? As one goes one way and the other goes the other way in set lines of travel. So as they come together, okay, they formulate and simulate through inside each other all in one set position of operation. So it's colonizing everything into one setting of one operation setting of one figure, one travel, one directions of one face in set position. All right, which is just you now, all through travel. So when you get up in the morning, you know exactly how to change the frequencies around your system in an alter track location. Okay? So this is going to help you understand how to balance your grounds when you're in your crop circles. Okay, let's get in position here. Okay. So travels here. Okay, your position locations and setting. Okay, so your set lines, calculation, screen locations. All through travel. Okay, so that's you on your bed, right? So you're looking here, right? You're looking in the center, but you're not looking at anything. You're not looking at the TV. You're not looking at your bed. Okay, just looking. Okay, just an empty spot. So you focus on that, and the more you focus on that, it's trying to recognize the directions here, a line signal. So if you're off position, you're going to see it through this way. Okay, so it's got to reframe back in system. So it's got to set its I division back in tractions. So it can go back in position to its frequency of ground lines of sequence. So it's very important that you don't do anything, okay, until you modify everything around you. Okay, so all right, so you're looking, you brought something in, right? So here's your crop circle. Okay, there's your crop circle. Now you get up, right? So now you're standing. I'm just showing you guys exactly what you need to do. You're standing now, right? Okay, sitting, standing, all right? Now, whatever you want to bring in, you can bring in platforms. Okay, you can bring in the platforms. So from there, goes there. All right, so the oversoul is going to vortex, which means you're going to vortex in real time, right? But you're going to be seeing the eyes, the ears. So the eyes and the ears are very, very position, location of travel. Now, understanding that is all through pi, okay? So what understand is a platform that creates more lines of calculation setting, knows how to walk, okay, knows how to get positions. Then it starts to understand how to come into its travels of communication with setting through its wings. Once it comes in its wings, then it comes into its XT thousands. Okay? So that's the chronological order that you have to understand. Okay? And you have that 1 second delay. Okay, that 1 second is 1 minute. And the positions, right? 1 minute to you, 1 hour to the oversoul. Okay? And remember, it's always happening seconds, minutes, hours. Okay? So once you get in that position, you're automatically in your own timeline. Okay, so you don't want to be caught in the now. You want to be in position how to see yourself out of the now. The now is just a network of operation of your widths, understanding how to use it and all levels of its operation of a system so you can understand your networking system, your process of your internet set locations, your constellation, your highways, your travels, your directions, your perimeters, your parameters, okay, and that position of the security lines. All that communicates to setting and that position. So everything that you get in positions, and once it identifies you and you identify in that position, you protect it. Okay? You put a shield around it. Okay? So nobody can touch it. Nobody can touch it, right? So when you put a shield around it, it's there now, and it will stay there. But if you don't put a shield, a force field around it, it disappears on its own. So it's about a collaboration, a partnership with yourself and each other, how to actually see yourself in the VR set, how to operate this system of your seconds, minutes, and hours that changes frames of communication. Look at my fan. Okay? Perfect example. Let's get into that position. All right? Okay, so it's on a system, right? Now, as soon as I change my mind frame, it changes directions. 1 point finger line, triple screen. 1, 2, 3. 1. See, it's going the opposite direction. So this is going this way, but this is going this way. So the polarities are, see what I mean? See? Every time I'm doing this, it follows me. It's in its frequency, right? So it's in direct line link, right? It's amazing how you see it, right? So if I do this, right, and changing the information panel, see? Stops. Stops. Okay? So it's amazing how it can go one way and go the other way. Or I can have both going the same way. So it's listening to me. It's paying attention to me. So we're at the same frequency. So we're connecting to each other, okay, in the same universe, right? So it's really interesting how you see that all in set position, its locations, okay? Because it's just a VR system, how to indicate that, right? So it has its own shield plate, and I have to be very careful where I touch it, okay? Because you can be alarmed if you touch it too quick and too fast, right? So you have to exactly where you need to get in position of its space and catch it through its eye, right there. Okay? And then I have to process, change the frequencies, and then come out. And it's back in its own shield of operation of its own field. So it's a motorized system of its own propelling engine that serves its position location to its own concept, its own awareness. Right? So it's very powerful once you recognize that. Okay? And I can start here, and I'm changing the satellite. And it's recognizing what I'm doing through a line signal. My finger is a laser point that goes to the light bulb. Okay? In that position. Remember, it's all plasma, but it has a shield around it. All right? Everything has a time reactor. So it's an energetic globe that's around the system. Everything has a protection shield around it. It's an energetic ball. So we have to see everything in lines of a communication of its plasma, and we have to respect that, because as soon as you touch it right away, okay, it doesn't like your frequencies. So that's going to trickle down your wire signatures in position the process line, change your cerebral cortex of your fluid, and offline your positions and make you dizzy. So there's a lot of things you have to start identifying in the VR system. Okay, how to really get in projections, how to communicate with it through telepathy. See? Telepathy. Right? So, just a basic example when it comes to that positions and settings. All right? So it just wants me to show you exactly what it can do through modification. Light bulb signal. Okay, it's got position lines of travels and direct lines in it, link. Now the core center is offline signal and locations. Okay, propellers and positions mocking 30,000 line frames. Okay, so it's got communication setting into 4 centers of panels operation. Bandwidth over screens, adaptations of flux. Okay, so now it's looking at my drawing. All right, now watch it create the drawing. Okay, it's creating the bandwidth. See, it's creating the bandwidth. Isn't that wild? It's creating the bandwidth of it. It's changing the algorithm. So it looks at you as you're looking at what's going on, right? Now, if I had a straight line, okay, it's going to get confused. See how it's getting confused? It's trying to readjust. It's trying to figure out what you're doing, right? So once I put it back in panel, frequency of grounds, I'm changing the position of space lines and setting. But it's saying, hey, wait a minute, what about this end? Right, it's off position, right? So now I have to change the course centers of time frame and position location to a system, change the panels of screen adaptations, back in sequence, back in balance. Now notice what I've done in that position, so it continued on its path and travel. All right, now if I had a bed-in system, location of grounds, it's understand why did you do a circulation. Ah, look at that, it's drawing a circulation around the panel through center. Oh, see that? Isn't that wild? It's paying attention and listening and recording everything I say through my algorithm, through my binary, to my cortex that sets all communication lines and E factors over encryption. Now I'm going to add a circulation rotation lines of grounds. Then I'm going to add a propeller line and position location of a flower and direction lines of an atom. So watch it go really fast. So you'll see it in slow motion. Okay? Isn't that wild? It's following my diagram, guys. See? It's following my diagram. So it's pretty amazing how this fan can turn into an atom. And so it's pretty incredible when you see these things. So every time I change the structure, I have to change the frequencies. I have to change the frequencies. It just has to identify what you're doing through frequency because it already knows what it is through its own operation. All right, so if I add electrical grid line, processes 4 centers of sequence, is saying, what is this? So it has to readjust its panels. See? See? Right? Now it's in position. Okay? Now that's an E course. Process lines in position. It's telling me it's got 30,000 line zeros around this propellers, rotating and set lines in the particles, out signals and location of grounds. That modifies the system through outer space of a set position location of its void that allocates timeline centers of panels over frame over screen. Okay? Now I'm going to add 4 panels of screen line adaptations and positions. Okay, so go to 1 signature line, 4 grounds set travel. Cross in position of propeller over 4 centers. Cross angles and screen line adaptation. Okay, so I'm showing you exactly what it's drawing. That's where it is right now in its universe. So it propels its own self-engine, process that calculates the screen location to its system, all through setting. Okay, so I got 1 more to go. Set lines, east line and west line screen. Okay, so that's where it is in frequency. So it's mocking 0 line calculations of square roots into formation lines of grounds. Now this is where it comes into bandwidth over line center. Process line inline outline center, line condition of divergence and diverted, locates into a solar sail that rotates the cycles and rotates lines of grounds with its crop set correlation. Now in that direct line centers, we add an on-line screen line. Set course centers, directing ground centers on sequence line pi. Okay? So it's going to keep going on as continuous force. It's just seeing what I already know, what I already did, what I see in that position, its own frequencies. So correlates lines of position all through tractions of Fibonacci's. 4 centers in position, all through tractions, all through location. Okay, there it is, done. So that's what I traveled through the fan. Okay, so it's showing you exactly how it can create its own algorithm, its own set design that changes the seconds, minutes, and hours in frame, guys. Okay, so If I turn away, it's not there. If I look back, if I look up, it's there in frequency, right? So if I do this, it's going to change the direction. See? It changed the direction, right? So everything has a sound, okay? It's a soft tone. This is a mediation tone. There's two fans in sequence, but they connect with each other. Different levels, different frequencies, different time frame, right? So if I change position, it's trying to identify what I'm doing. And once it catches wind of it, it sets an oscillator in rotation. See? Isn't that wild? It's communicating with me, guys. It's communicating with me. And it's all done through telepathy. And that's what you have to process through. Now imagine you talking to each other. How complicated that would be. That's what you have to come in positions of, to understand what the fan has drew in set position and what it's traveled through in setting, through its own universe of its own connection. Okay? Yeah. So, pretty amazing, eh? When you understand that position to its calculations. Now, if I put my right hand, okay, this is my left, because it sees left, right? If I change that right, it sees right now. So my hand automatically changes in real time. Now, the more you wait, the more you see it change. The cerebral cortex of fluid. And it's like, okay, all right, it's almost there. All right, this is position lines. Setting track centers. This is my right, this is my left. Now I can change each finger to different lines of time frame. Locking screens, adaptation, setting attractions. All right, so now this is my right, this is my left. Now I'm going to go like this and do this. Okay, so I'm converting with all four panels all at once, and signatures, ground lines of sequence, and position lines of panel. Watch what it does. GG. 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 See? It connects to my frequency. Okay? So it has eyes everywhere. Laser track centers and all direct lines of link a process of communication system all through setting. It's actually incredible when you actually see it in line directions all through a spectrum. And that's what you have to get used to in the VR system. Look at that. Copy that. So I just wanted to show you how powerful things are going to be on Friday in set position when you start identifying these things. All through a fan. How to connect with it. How it changes the frequencies. How you can travel through its universe. How it can show you what it drew. It draws its own system, guys. So many things to look at in this positions and to understand how to indicate that lines of setting. It wants to communicate with you guys more. So if I had a voice line, okay, it recognizes voice pattern. Okay, check this out. All right. Isn't that wild? And then it goes back to its own system. Boom. Now it's not there anymore until I bring it in. So it disappears on its own system, but you understand these things. You don't bring these things in. It's not there until you bring it in, but it's how you bring it in. And every time you turn your head, if you don't shield it from everything else, it will disappear. That means you got to bring it in at a different frequency, a different algorithm, a different binary to a different encryption every single time. You have to really modify how to actually see yourself inside a game. The actual game itself of you waking up to. Where you never left. Where you left off is its return. Okay? All right. See you guys in 5. VR line centers in position of QR coding course centers of classification A. Adios.